I still remember the sound of the plates touching the table that night. It was soft, almost normal, but my chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe properly. We were all sitting at the dining table in my parents' house, the same house I grew up in. The lights were warm, the food smelled good, and from the outside, it looked like a perfect family dinner. But inside, I felt like I didn't belong there anymore. My name is Adeline, and I'm 28 years old. I had come to this dinner telling myself to stay calm. Just smile. Just eat. Don't expect anything. I have learned that lesson many times before. With my parents, expecting kindness only led to disappointment. My mother, Margaret, sat across from me, cutting her food slowly, watching everyone like she was in control of the room. My father, Thomas, sat at the head of the table, quiet but always judging. My brother Ethan was there too, relaxed, confident, like he always belonged. And then there was a man I didn't really know sitting at the end of the table. My parents had introduced him as an old friend. His name was Daniel Reeves. At first, everything felt normal. Small talk. Food being passed around. But then, as always, the conversation turned toward me. "So, Adeline," my mother said, smiling in that way that never reached her eyes. "How is your little business doing?" I felt my stomach tighten. I answered calmly, "It's going well." My father let out a short laugh. "Well enough?" he asked. "Or just enough to survive?" Before I could answer, my mother waved her hand and laughed. "Oh, please," she said. "Adeline doesn't need money." She's always been dramatic about these things. The table went quiet for a second. Then my brother chuckled. I stared at my plate, my face burning. I wanted to speak. I wanted to say how hard I worked, how many nights I stayed awake worrying about bills, how alone I felt. But I said nothing. I had learned that my words didn't matter to them. Then something unexpected happened. Someone cleared their throat. It wasn't my father. It wasn't my mother. It wasn't me, it was Daniel. He slowly put down his glass and looked directly at my parents. His voice was calm, steady. "That's interesting," he said, "because I'm here tonight to hand Adeline a check." Time stopped. My mother froze, her smile falling apart. My father stared at him like he didn't understand the words. My heart started beating so fast I thought everyone could hear it. I looked at Daniel, confused and scared at the same time. And in that moment, I knew this dinner was not going to end the way it always did. When I was a child, I believed my parents knew everything. I believed that if I tried hard enough, they would see me, love me, choose me. But as I grew older, I learned a painful truth: love in my family came with conditions. I never met them. Growing up, my parents always had a favorite. My brother Ethan. He was loud, confident, and exactly what my father wanted. When Ethan spoke, everyone listened. When I spoke, I was told to be quiet. If Ethan failed, it was bad luck. If I failed, it was proof that I was never good enough. My mother, Margaret, liked to say she was helping me by being honest. "Life will be harder for you, Adeline," she would say. "You're too sensitive." Those words stayed with me. They followed me into adulthood like a shadow. After college, my father wanted me to work at his company. It was stable, safe, and completely controlled by him. I told him I wanted to start my own design business instead. I remember how quiet the room became that day. My father didn't yell. That would have been easier. He just looked at me and said, "Don't come back asking for help when you fail." And my mother nodded. I didn't fail. But I didn't succeed easily either. I worked long hours from a tiny apartment. I skipped meals. I cried in the bathroom so my clients wouldn't hear my voice shake. Some months, I barely made enough to cover rent. But every time I thought about quitting, I remembered their faces, their doubt, and something inside me refused to give up. Still, the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the loneliness. Family dinners became torture. My parents would ask about my business, not because they cared, but because they wanted proof I was struggling. And when I didn't give them that, they created their own story. "Adeline is always exaggerating," my mother would tell relatives. "She likes attention," my father would add. I stopped defending myself. What was the point? They had already decided who I was. That's why that dinner felt different from the moment I walked in. I didn't know why. I just felt it in my chest. And when Daniel Reeves spoke up, something inside me cracked open. They didn't know that Daniel had been watching my journey for years. They didn't know he had seen my bank records, my growth, my discipline. They didn't know that while they were laughing at me. Someone else had been quietly respecting me. As I sat there, hearing my parents dismiss my struggles again, I realized something painful but clear. This wasn't just about money. It never was. It was about being unseen, unbelieved, and underestimated by the people who were supposed to protect me. And for the first time in my life, I felt the truth rising to the surface. Not anger, not hate, just clarity, and clarity I would soon learn. It's far more powerful than revenge. After Daniel spoke, the room didn't explode the way I expected. There was no shouting, no instant denial. Instead, there was silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. The kind that presses against your ears and forces everyone to face what they've been avoiding. My mother was the first to move. She picked up her glass, then put it down again, her hand shaking slightly. "I don't understand," she said, forcing a small laugh. "Daniel, you must be mistaken. Adeline has always struggled. She tells us herself." I swallowed hard. That wasn't true. But hearing her say it out loud still hurt more than I was ready for. Daniel didn't look at me. He looked at my parents, calm, focused, like a man who dealt with facts, not feelings. "There's no mistake," he said. "I've worked with Adeline for years." Years. That word echoed in my mind. My parents turned to me at the same time, their eyes sharp, searching my face like they were looking for a lie. My heart pounded. Part of me wanted to shrink back into my chair the way I always did. But something inside me felt different now, stronger. "Tired of hiding? You never asked," I said quietly. My father frowned. "Asked what?" "You never asked how I was really doing," I replied. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. "You assumed, you decided, and you repeated it until it became the truth to you." My brother Ethan shifted in his seat. He looked uncomfortable, like he wanted to disappear. For once, he didn't have a joke. My mother sighed, annoyed now. "Adeline, don't turn this into a drama. We're just being realistic." That word again? Realistic, it had always been their excuse. Daniel finally turned to me. His eyes were kind, and that almost made me cry. "Adeline," he said, "do you want me to explain?" I nodded. I couldn't trust my voice anymore. He opened his folder and placed it gently on the table, like he was laying down evidence in a courtroom. "Adeline started with very little," he said. "No family backing, no safety net. But she was consistent, careful, patient. She built everything step by step." My father leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "So what are you saying?" I asked. "That she's rich now." Daniel didn't smile. "I'm saying she's independent." That word hit harder than any insult ever had. Independent. I felt tears fill my eyes, not from sadness, but from release. For so long, I had carried the weight of their doubt. And now, in this room with everyone watching, it was finally being lifted. This wasn't the end yet. I could feel it. This was just the moment before everything broke open, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of what came next. Daniel slowly reached into his folder again, and this time the movement felt heavy, like whatever he was about to take out would change the shape of the room forever. My parents watched him closely now, not with confidence, with fear. "This check," Daniel said, pulling out a single envelope, "is the result of Adeline's latest business payout and long-term investment return." He placed it on the table, right in front of me. For a second, I didn't touch it. I just stared. All those years of being told I was irresponsible. All those times my mother said I would come back begging. All those quiet nights I spent alone, doubting myself. They all rushed back at once. My father's face turned pale. "How much?" he asked, his voice low. Daniel didn't answer him right away. He looked at me instead. "That's Adeline's private information," he said calmly. I had never seen my parents denied anything so simply before. My mother laughed again. But this time it sounded broken. "This is ridiculous," she said. "Adeline, say something. Tell him this is a misunderstanding." I finally reached for the envelope. My hands were steady now. I held it, feeling the weight of it, not just the money inside, but what it represented. "There's no misunderstanding," I said, my voice surprised even me. It was quiet but clear, stronger than it had ever been at this table. "You told everyone I didn't need money," I continued. "But what you really meant was that I didn't deserve help, that I didn't deserve belief." My father stood up slowly. "We raised you," he said sharply. "Everything you are is because of us." I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. "You raised me," I said, "but you didn't support me. There's a difference." The words hung in the air. My brother Ethan finally spoke. "Adeline, why didn't you tell us?" I turned to him, my chest tight, because every time I tried, I was laughed at. Silence again, not the uncomfortable silence from before. This one felt honest. Daniel stood up. "I'll step outside," he said gently. "You can take your time." When he left the room, something shifted. There was no audience anymore. Just family. Just truth. My mother sat down slowly, her eyes shiny. "We didn't think you'd survive on your own," she whispered. And there it was. Not concern. Not love, doubt, double quotes. "I didn't survive," I said softly. "I grew." I stood up, holding the envelope close to my chest. My legs were shaking, but my heart felt calm. "This isn't about money," I said. "This is about finally being seen." I walked toward the door, leaving them behind, sitting with a truth they could no longer ignore. And as I stepped into the quiet night air, I knew this was the moment my life truly became mine. The night air felt cold on my skin as I stepped outside my parents' house. I stood on the porch for a moment, my hand still wrapped around the envelope. My heart beating slowly now, like it had finally found its rhythm. Behind me, through the closed door, I could still feel their presence, their confusion, their regret. But for the first time in my life, their emotions were no longer my responsibility. Daniel was standing near his car, waiting quietly. He looked at me and gave a small nod. Nothing more. No praise, no questions. Just respect. And that meant more to me than he could ever know. "Thank you," I said, my voice soft. "You earned it," he replied simply, as he drove away. I stayed there alone, letting everything sink in. I thought I would feel angry, or proud, or victorious. But what I felt was something much deeper. Peace. Growing up, I was always taught that family was everything. That no matter how much they hurt you, you stayed. You endured. You forgave in silence. I believed that for years. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. I made myself smaller so others could feel bigger. But standing there that night, I finally understood something that changed me forever. Love that costs you your self-worth. It's not love. I didn't cut my parents off that night. I didn't shout or slam the door. I simply chose distance. And that choice felt like freedom. Over the next weeks, things changed. My parents called. At first, they spoke carefully, like they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. My mother cried once. My father apologized in his own way, awkward and stiff. I listened, but I didn't rush to fix anything. For once, I let them sit with the damage they had caused. My relationship with Ethan changed too. He admitted he never realized how much I was hurt. I forgave him, but I didn't forget. Forgiveness doesn't erase memory. It just releases the pain. As for me, I focused on my life, my business, my peace. I moved into a brighter apartment. I slept better. I laughed more. Not because I had money, but because I finally believed in myself without needing permission. The real revenge wasn't the check. It wasn't the silence at the dinner table. It wasn't seeing their shocked faces. The real revenge was becoming whole on my own. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt unseen by your own family, if you've ever been told you weren't enough, please remember this: your worth is not decided at a dinner table. Your success doesn't need their approval. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away with your head high and your heart intact. Thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. And remember, you are not alone. It's been a year since that dinner. Sometimes I still think about that moment. The sound of the chair scraping the floor. The look on my mother's face, the way my heart finally stopped racing when I stepped outside. But now, when I remember it, the pain feels distant. Like a scar that reminds me I survived, not a wound that still bleeds. Life didn't suddenly become perfect after that night. Healing never works that way. There were days I felt guilty for pulling away from my parents. Days I wondered if I was selfish. Days I almost called just to hear a familiar voice, even if it hurt. But each time I felt that pull, I asked myself one simple question: would going back make me smaller again? The answer was always yes, so I kept choosing myself. I rebuilt my life slowly with intention. I stopped explaining my choices to people who had already decided not to understand. I learned to sit with silence without feeling like I had to fill it. I learned that peace can feel unfamiliar when you've lived in emotional chaos for too long. My parents and I speak now, but differently, with boundaries, with space. They no longer joke about my failures. They no longer question my independence. Not because I demanded it, but because I no longer allowed disrespect to stay in my life. And if I'm honest, the hardest part wasn't proving them wrong. The hardest part was accepting that. I never needed to prove anything at all. For so many years, I thought revenge meant watching the people who hurt you regret it. I thought it meant winning in a way they could see. But real revenge is quieter than that. It happens when you stop living for their validation. When their opinions no longer control your sleep, your confidence, or your future. That check from the bank officer. I invested it wisely. I grew my business. But the most valuable thing I gained that night wasn't money. It was self-respect. If you're listening to this and you're still sitting at a table where your voice is ignored, if you're still being told your dreams are unrealistic, if the people who should support you are the ones holding you back, please hear this. You are not weak for wanting more. You are not ungrateful for choosing yourself. And you are not wrong for outgrowing the place that once raised you. Sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is walk away quietly and build a life so full that the past can no longer reach her. Thank you for staying with me until the end of my story. If this resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters, and your story deserves to be told too.